We are recording now.
And again, thank you all for being here today for the Nevada Library Legislative Day webinar presented by the Nevada Library Association. And as Joan mentioned, we are recording this session, and so it will be available later on for viewing, and it will be able to be found on the NLA website. So the order of things for the day. There we go. Just so you have an overview of where we're going in the webinar, and we are looking to keep this webinar to 1 hour to 60 minutes and have time for questions, not only as you see at the end, but we will have questions at the different segments throughout an opportunity, and we're going to ask that everyone put their questions in the chat. And if you haven't found chat, the chat is on the bottom ribbon and should be next to the number next to participants, and you can click on that, and then you're able to put that information or your questions or clarifications into chat. We do have one of our intrepid participants today, Joy Holt, who's going to be monitoring chat and make sure that we can capture the different questions that you might have or different comments. So don't hesitate to put that information up there for us as we go along. And so with the basics of the housekeeping, with the opening that you see today, we will have several great speakers, including some welcoming messages, some information from the Nevada Library Association, our president, that will go over some great things going on with legislative session and different initiatives that are going along. A special speaker for focus on our engaging with our legislators and elected officials. And then also the highlights of what is available for you on the NLA website. So if we want to move forward, we will have a special welcome today, but I wanted to let you know we've have put this together via the Government Relations Committee, and co-chairs. One is me, Diane Baker, and Joan Dallasong at Washoe County Library. There as well, you have our contact information for the session, for not only related to what's going on today in the webinar, but as the session goes on. And we want to invite you to participate, ask us questions, not only for specific initiatives, but maybe just general how-tos if you're getting started in connecting with your legislators. Okay. So we will we have a great introduction. Unfortunately, Jovan Sotak, she's the interim administrator for the Nevada State Library Archives and Public Records, and is a supporter of libraries. And we have a recorded message from her. If you want to, Joan, if you want to go forward to that, and we'll just advise you that you may have to pop up your own audio just a little bit. It should come through fairly well on that part. So are we ready for that, Joan?
Actually, I believe that our special guest may be coming in.
Okay, we will.
But
is our guest on board?
Not quite yet. Okay. Why don't you go ahead and say who it is? We'll just stall.
Okay. All right. No, we are just so pleased to have with us our special guest, Senator Mo Dennis, and he is representing District 2 in Clark County. He is also the president pro tem of the Senate and a fabulous supporter of libraries for many, many years, and definitely invested in libraries on that part. So do we have them on board?
I do see the senator. If Senator, if you are ready, we are.
We are, and please just unmute yourself, and we would just welcome to have your comments and your introduction today.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
All right, so let me, I need to flip this up on here so that it doesn't look like I'm looking down at you. All right. Let's see. Oh, I guess that won't matter. Thank you. Oh, here we go. All right. Good afternoon. It's good to be with you. I always love being with librarians. As already was mentioned, Senator Mo Dennis and also President Pro Tem of the Nevada Senate. Pleased to take a moment to welcome you to the Nevada Library Association's virtual legislative training day. I don't know that you've had that before. There's a lot of what we haven't had this past year. But we are all experiencing an adjustment to our procedures these days due to the pandemic. Although this meeting is a bit different than in the past, I'm confident that you will find the content presented via this virtual platform informative. First, I want to thank the association staff and administration for their dedicated work to ensure that our libraries continue to provide the general public access to informative materials and services in communities across the state. And I have had the opportunity to visit many of your libraries over the years. In addition, we also need to recognize the volunteers who freely give their time and help libraries function and remain a central part of the community. Surely, like many of you, libraries have been an important part of my life since childhood. Throughout my education, I spent countless hours in libraries and learned to appreciate the treasure trove of knowledge that is available with a little help from librarians. And it's where I dreamed what I could be when I was there at my library as I was growing up. As an adult, I've had the opportunity to support the work of public libraries for many years by involvement with the Nevada Parent Teacher Association and also serving as a library board member and past chair of the Las Vegas Clark County Library District that I served for 8 years. And I always like to point out that I never thought of myself in elected office, but for some reason I always wanted to be a library trustee. I don't know why I knew what a library trustee was, but I knew I loved libraries, and that's the one thing that I did want to do, and that was a marvelous 8 years. I also found at that point it would have been my future career in computers, which I now am retired from, in the libraries by attending a computer club that met at the library. Well, while I was there checking out some books, I saw them and decided to stay, and I made a career out of that, and I appreciate the library for offering those kind of programs. Currently, I also serve as chairman of the Senate Committee on Education, and strongly believe that Nevada communities benefit greatly from local libraries. Students of all ages can access research materials, explore topics of interest, and engage in technology that is necessary for their academic success. And I appreciate the work that libraries are doing to work with school districts to make sure that students have access to those. And I know over the years we've added materials that can be shared at schools and at libraries, so I appreciate that. A few years ago, I had the opportunity to help make the East Las Vegas Library become a reality. I had tried working on that when I was in as a library trustee, and we never got very far because it needed money. And I had an opportunity. The library approached me about helping with some legislation, and we did that. And the library had some great folks that we brought. It was the whole team brought together that we were able to create that East Las Vegas Library that I drive by almost on a daily basis when I'm in Las Vegas. Obviously not while I'm up here, but it's just not just down the street from my house, and I always see people there. And I know that it has been a modern technological structure. As I drive by, I'm always amazed because growing up, usually what we got in our neighborhood was kind of the leftovers. So you would have expected a square box, full of books and not a lot of computers. But the library that we have there is an amazing library, and I know that that's the libraries of the future, and I appreciate that. And in communities like mine, that's such an important thing for our kids to be able to have that available to them, and it makes it unlimited what they could do. And that library, East Las Vegas, is becoming known as the heart of our community there. This year, the legislature is in session to make decisions on the laws that govern our state. I appreciate the chance today to share this message and recognize the dutiful efforts that are made every day by dedicated individuals that are attending today here and throughout the state, those who couldn't attend. I applaud your energies and commitment in maintaining the library services of archiving government documents, preservation, research, technology, and many other offerings. I know my kids really appreciated the story time as they all grew up that we did at the libraries. You are the library patrons' connection to the world, and I appreciate you are my connection to the world, and so I thank you for your dedication. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Senator. We so appreciate you joining with us and being such a supporter of libraries. We appreciate that and appreciate your remarks. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, then with following up those wonderful remarks, we have a few remarks from our interim administrator for the Nevada State Library and Archives and Public Records, Jovan Sotak. And as mentioned, this is a recorded message that she was able to share with us because she couldn't be with part of the webinar today. And may have to adjust your audio just a bit to catch it, but we will have that if you can get that going.
What an honor it is to speak with you today. I'm Jovan Sotak, Interim Administrator of the Nevada State Library, Archives, and Public Records. I'm not really a librarian, I just play one on TV, at least for today. Like many of you, I work in a library. I value libraries. In fact, for a short time, I was on the library board in Tonopah. I grew up there, and the Tonopah Library was one of my favorite places. It was where I discovered Nancy Drew, which was my first series reading binge of many such binges in my life. It was where I researched my first term paper. It was also where I met my first alien. His name was Merlin, and he was an ambassador from Andromeda. Libraries hold a very special place in my heart, and I firmly believe that because I spent so much time in libraries, I have never been bored a day in my life. There is everything to learn at the library. The Tonopah Library has an interesting history. It was built in 1905 as a result of the town's first death in 1901. After traveling to Tonopah for the death of his brother, George Weeks suggested that the town form a library and send a donation of 100 volumes to get it started. From there, it was the efforts of what the local newspaper described as 3 public-spirited women who were responsible for the building and funding of the library. They held socials and lectures and solicited local businesses and families. One even slept on the building site and supervised the laying of each block. They were passionate advocates and deeply believed in the value of libraries in Nevada. As a division within the Department of Administration, the Nevada State Library, Archives, and Public Records provides comprehensive government information services to state and local government and Nevada citizens through efficient library, archives and records management, and mail services programs. We are a government agency. In addition to administering a division that provides collections and reference services to meet the needs of government agencies and libraries, we're responsible for library and informational services development and coordination. What the governor supports and advocates for is what the Nevada State Library supports and advocates for. It's what I support, and it's what the next administrator will support. We are representatives of the executive branch of government. And today is all about the legislative branch. Today is about you, the passionate advocates of local libraries, representing your communities and educating legislators about what your libraries and patrons most want and need. I believe in the work that you're doing. I believe in the value of Nevada's libraries. I believe that professionals like you who have passion for what they do can come together in advocacy to bring the practice of libraries forward to benefit communities throughout Nevada. So, on behalf of the Nevada State Library, thank you, members of the Nevada Library Association. Thank you for participating in Nevada state government and the legislative process. Welcome to Nevada Libraries Legislative Day 2021.
Oh, another great message from our interim state library administrator, and good thoughts and a little bit of Nevada library history there about Tonopah and the start of their library. We are moving on to our next section, which is a focus on the Nevada Library Association and NLA interests and highlights within the legislative process this time around in this session. And leading off our discussion today, and the coordinator of the discussion is Todd Colgrove, who is the NLA president for 2021. He is also the director for the Carson City Library and has also been the administrator at the State Library and Archives, as well as being at UNR Libraries. And at this time, I'd like to turn the mic over to Todd Colgrove, and he will also introduce the other participants that are our past president and president-elect. Todd, would you join in, please?
All right, golly, thank you, Diane, and thank you, Joan. The Government Relations Committee and the members of the NLA Executive Board here are doing a ton of heavy lifting. So thank you for stepping up to the plate. First off, I wanted to introduce my fellow members of the leadership team here at NLA, and it is the people that are going to keep me out of the weeds. And together, all of us are moving forward. One of them is Forrest Lewis, who was last year's president, the outgoing president of the Nevada Library Association. And Marcy Smedley, who is the incoming president, will be president in 2022. Boy, it seems odd to say that. 22, not that Marcy would be the president, of course. But I just wanted to give both of you a moment, Forrest and Marcy, if you had any comments or thoughts that you might want to share with the rest of us. It's a mistake to let me to do all the talking, but I will do that, Forrest. So not that that's a threat.
Thanks, Todd. Just real quick, it's my honor to be the current past president with the Nevada Library Association, and I have the dubious honor of being the president during almost the entire year of COVID-19 and the struggles that we had. But I have to say, I'm really excited as we begin to come out of COVID-19 and the businesses come back and the schools are starting to reopen. And I think the libraries play such an important part in that recovery process. And it's really exciting to see what libraries are going to do as far as technology and new services and how we're going to really meet the needs of our community. So I'm really excited, and I really applaud all of you for taking the time to be here today, and because we know that we can't do any of this without the support of our electeds and resources and all the things that we need to make sure that we're helping the community. So congratulations to all of you for taking the time to be here, and I really look forward to what the year has to bring.
Thank you, Forrest. And Marcy, I didn't mean to put either of you on the spot like that today. I know that you're just reopening as well, but if you've got...
It's okay. I just quickly would like to also thank everyone for being here and just share what an important job library advocacy is. And just a reminder to everyone that sometimes on some days that is speaking with your elected officials, but some days it's talking to your neighbors about the importance of libraries in our communities too. So just keeping in mind that, you know, library advocacy shows up in a lot of different ways. And I am thankful to each of you for being here and for the role that you all play in sharing that with us and sharing it with our, you know, members of our community so that we can all just amplify that message a little bit louder and you know, speak a little more to the importance of libraries, all types of libraries in all of our communities. So thank you all for being here, and I look forward to advocating alongside of you.
My goodness, thank you both. Again, you're both much better spoken than I will ever be, but I have to say thanks in particular for giving me a second to go sideways and look at all of the people that are with us today. This is the DNA of Nevada's libraries, and thank you. While I climb up on a soapbox real quickly here, because what is the Nevada Library Association? Well, it's an association first and foremost. It's a professional association. Couple of things. We are all here because, number one, we all believe in the power of participatory democracy. We actually drank the Kool-Aid about this. Talk with your representatives and tell them what's important to you and what's important to our community, and encourage them to do the right things. And the second point is that we really and truly believe in the core of our beings in the power of libraries, and more specifically of the library professionals, each of you, and how you can change and do change the lives of people on a daily basis. That's why we're joining those two hand in glove, right? We believe in the magic of libraries. Sometimes the only way that we can do our real magic in the library, though, is if we advocate with the folks that have the nickels and dimes that they can put at our resources in the legislation to make that possible. So again, Joan and Diane both made me promise to be short in my comments, but I think Diane mentioned I was a university professor first, so I will be short. But again, what we're doing as the NLA Executive Board first got together and we talked with each other, talked about all of the various things that are moving, the moving targets in the legislature, both here in the state and at the federal level in the Congress and the Senate. And so just as we kick off this legislative season, now it's no longer one day where we're going to show up and pester the legislators in the state legislature. We're in fact going to actively get engaged with our representatives, both on the local level all the way to the national level, throughout these next weeks and months, so that they hear us, they understand where we're going. So just a couple of bills that we're following that I wanted to make sure that are on your radar. First off, and I should have led with thanking Acting Administrator Sotak for giving us the keynote to begin with. But it bears mention, you wouldn't think about it, but the very budget of the Nevada State Library Archives and Public Records is a function of legislation, right? So it starts with the governor, and the governor's finance office gets together with the team of the library and figures out what they want to support. And here's the good news and the bad news. The good news is that the budget that the governor is recommending for the Nevada State Library Archives and Public Records this year is, for the most part, pretty flat. Well, that might not seem like good news, but keep in mind that every other agency of state government, including the state library, has been asked to come up with 12% cuts this year, another 12% cuts next year. So in an environment where there's all this cutting going on, a flat budget is a pretty good piece of news. Why does that matter? Because if the state library isn't functioning, the federal dollars that we all need to access that would come through the state library, we can't get to them. The resources that are licensed by the state through the state library that we use in many of our libraries around the state, we can't get there. And even down at the granular level of, if you're a public library, those collection development dollars or that come in and provide the extra, again, nickels and dimes that can enable us to put print resources on the shelves, that's a function of the budget. So our position as an association across all of the executive board, and feel free to leverage this as you're contacting your representative, is thank you. Thank you, Governor Sisolak, for your support. Thank you, Mr. and Ms. Legislator, for your support of that budget, because it's critical path. And here's why. If you cut that budget, we can't do the magic that we're able to do out here in the streets. And did I mention, interesting little factoid, if you go back to the public library statistics and see how many active public library cards there were in 2019, that number in the state of Nevada is is a couple of million active library cards, which is almost the exact same number of people that voted in the election here in Nevada in 2000, in the past year. So don't hesitate to say your active library card holders are also active members in this participatory democracy. They need your help, and we will make sure that they know that you're supporting it. Second point, I wanted to make sure, and I'm so delighted that Susan Slikerman is on board here. Quick heads up, Senate Bill 26 in the Nevada legislature is coming around again. Now, it's been through the legislature a couple of times. What does that bill propose? It basically proposes, that there should be some level of credentialing associated with the folks that we're calling librarians in school libraries. What does that look like? The devil's in the details. Those details are trying to be hashed out in the legislature right now. Our position as an association is much like the MLS. Your professional credentialing is important. It matters. There's a reason why we go to school. There's whether it's to be an MLS or to have a school library certification, and we value that and support that. Our one caveat with the legislation in the state legislature is that we would like to see it pass the way that it landed last biennium, which is to say that that requirement is there, but anyone that is currently working as a school librarian, regardless of their certification, would, if this bill legislation gets passed, would be explicitly grandfathered in statewide. That would mean if you're working as a school librarian in Washoe County, you could also go to Clark County or vice versa. For the life of your professional career, that's great. We're not expecting you to all of a sudden go back to school in order to keep your job. That presented a real roadblock last biennium. And if we can address that going out of the gate, then there's a chance that we may be able to get forward on that. And finally, I wanted to make sure that you're all aware of the Build America's Libraries Act that is in the Senate right now with at least 6 co-sponsors. We are actively trying to get our senators from the state of Nevada to co-sponsor that. That's essentially the first, that would provide some of the first federal funding to build libraries and remodel things and fix a lot of the things that are broken that libraries have seen in nearly 40 years. So we're all about that. We'd very much like to see that pass, and we'd really like to see you reach out and encourage your representatives, if you similarly believe that to be the case, that you think it's important. Why? Because the library, like everything else, gets old, gets beat up, it gets used up, it's well loved, right? Don't let it be like the Velveteen Rabbit and have to completely get thrown on the trash heap before we reach out and give it the love that it deserves. We need to keep it going. So that said, I'm gonna step back off of the soapbox. If there are any questions, feel free to jump in or clarification. Again, Susan is expert on SB 26 right now. I did want to give you the hot tip, though, that the Government Relations Committee has pulled together a web resource that you're going to be able to look at and see more details about this specific legislation than I was able to share in a thumbnail. So that said, I will turn on my mute again so that I can promise to be good. And thank you again, team, for pulling this together.
Well, thank you so much, Todd. And just a reminder, if you have any questions or any comments, please use the chat. I don't see anything there yet, but if you need to find the chat function, it is on the bottom ribbon of the presentation right next to participants. And just make sure I don't see any questions that have come up. But again, thank you, Todd, for presenting a good introduction to the legislation that's going on at the state level and the federal level with the Build the Libraries Act. And yeah, definitely we'll be watching those items. So And I do see, thank you, Susan. I see your comment. We will be in contact to make sure we have the best information that we can provide via the website as well. So next on our agenda is the segment on how to engage your legislators. And especially if you're new, haven't had a chance to do this much, or just need a refresher on contacting legislators, we have with us today Sina Lloyd. She is the Director of Research and Workforce Development for Blockchains. And previously, she had been the director for Carson City Library. And we do have the information and have that presentation set up, and I'm looking forward to what she has to share with us. Sina, I'd like to turn it over to you, and please take the mic.
Thank you, Diane. Thank you to NLA for putting this together and asking me to participate. Amongst those two hats, the hat that I wear and the hat that I wore, I am also the Friends of the Carson City Library president, and I also ran for office this last year. I was not successful, but both of those things, I think, put a unique look at what we're looking at right now with COVID. You know, I have a lot of friends. A lot of you are my friends, and I've heard a lot about what has been going on in your libraries during this this tough time. I think that it's important that when I'm talking about this with legislators, that you not just apply it to the legislators every other year during our biennial sessions, but that you also apply it to your boards. You know, some of you have boards that can kind of act autonomously, and then some of you have a board of supervisors who appoints your board members. And I think it's really important to ensure that they also know what's going on in your libraries on, you know, daily might be a little too much, that, you know, but like, I would say weekly. I mean, I can't not pick up the phone and talk to a board of supervisor here in Carson City and not talk about the library still. I think that's an important piece of who we are and how we can advocate for our communities. So connecting with your legislators specifically during COVID is not impossible. It's going to be difficult. As you saw with Senator Dennis coming on earlier, you know, they are in their offices, the building is closed, there's really not a lot of physical access to them. You know, when a bill is in committee, you are, you know, encouraged to give comment. You can do so online by typing in, finding the bill and typing in this very small area your opinion of the bill. You can call in and provide public comment, though, you know, there have been complaints recently on some more controversial bills that they've only been given 10 minutes total of public comment. And sometimes that's not enough for one of the bills that's being heard. And you can also provide written comment. So you can provide a written comment and email that to the committee. And you can also provide a written comment to your legislators yourselves. So, you know, we don't really know yet what registered lobbying looks like during this time of COVID. The interpretation was the lobbying clause is really for when you're in the building and talking to legislators. But, you know, to be careful, you are going to want to, unless you're the Government Relations Committee here at NLA, you're going to want to talk to your personal legislator. So those who are on video, I can at least see, raise your hand if you know who your state senator and assembly person are. There are ways, there's online, you can take and go to the legislative website and put in your zip code or your address and find out who those individuals are. But those are the individuals that you're going to be able to talk to no matter what. I mean, they might try to hide from you, but like no matter what, you should be able to get to them and they should hear you out. It's like, for instance, if I wanted to go and lobby, say, Senator Dennis, who is not my legislator, that's a little bit more complicated, and there will be a process that the Legislative Council Bureau has in place to do that. So anyone, okay, sorry, I went through that. So now contacting and requesting an online meeting. So what they're doing right now is they have attachés or assistants that are in their offices. You can still call them and you can request a meeting. And this is, instead of an in-person meeting, you're going to be on a Zoom meeting, very similar to what we're on now. And on that meeting, you can then talk to them and tell them what your issues are, tell them what you want them to support, what you don't want them to support. But you need to have an ask. You need to have an action that you want them to do. You know, I spent a lot of time walking my community and talking to people who were outside. You know, I mean, we're in COVID again, and just seeing what they wanted from their legislative representatives. A lot of them didn't know. A lot of them didn't know really what their legislative representatives did or what they had power over. And so this is an opportunity for you to really understand what your legislator's job is and how you can help direct them to change something that you don't like or you want to see more of. And so I think that's really important. You can still write a letter to them. You can send them a card. You know, we are still in COVID. And so this is something that, you know, mail used to be something that you're like, oh, I don't want any mail. But when you're, you know, in quarantine or you're in your house most of the time, a piece of mail can be a nice respite. And so sending that to their legislative addresses, which you again can find on Nellis on that website, could be a nice personal touch to try to communicate what you're looking to communicate. And also talk to their staff. So someone like Senator Dennis is going to have more staff since he is a chair of a committee than someone without a chair position, but their staff members are there to listen. And so if you call and you can't get a meeting with a senator or an assemblyman in a timely manner that you would like to, communicate with their staff. We currently have an attaché staying with us, and I would just let anyone here know, if you are represented by Senator Brooks. Senator Brooks and his staff know all about libraries and why they are very important, and that is shared probably on a daily basis. So, you know, it's just making sure that these individuals know what you know, what you're asking for. So be specific in your ask. You know, you can say, do you love libraries? And they could say yes, because who doesn't love libraries? I mean, there's very few people who are going to come out and say, nope, I can't with libraries. So, you know, be specific in that ask. And ask for that action and know what outcome you want, because that's very important that they are aware that there's a specific outcome that you're looking for. You know, use that limited time wisely. You might only have a 10-minute Zoom meeting and 5 minutes of that is taken up by technology difficulties in trying to connect. So make sure that you are ready to communicate what you really need to communicate in that meeting. You can practice your asks. You can do that with other library staff. I mean, when Diane and I were working together at Carson, you know, and we were in person, this is a couple years ago, but we were able to talk back and forth and really have a discussion on what were we really trying to get to. And then tell the truth. You know, I mean, we're all librarians. I think we all will. But, you know, cite your sources. If you are saying something and it seems like an outrageous number, a little bit like, you know, Todd's number of the voting, I think that is an amazing statistic to use with your legislators. But have your source available so that you don't get I don't think that's true. Make sure that you are the authoritative authority in the room that can confirm that, yes, what I am talking about is accurate. And then be respectful. You know, not every single person on this call has a senator or assemblyman who is going to be extremely supportive of libraries. They might be lukewarm to it. They might be much more worried about the budget moving forward with the state. They might be much more worried about COVID relief for businesses. And so just be respectful of their time and, you know, follow up with a note and thank them for allowing you to take their time to speak with them, even though you voted them into office. It's important. So now, experience campaigning. So I did want to talk just really quickly about the voting line. So there's a line where you can't go past a certain amount of footage. So I didn't go past that line, but there was a line that was out past it. So I was walking around and I was handing out snacks and treats, and this was on election night. And I had a lady stop me. And she started crying, and so I could barely understand what she was saying. But what she communicated was that the Carson City Library had done amazing things for her niece who could not read. And we were able to connect her niece with books that she enjoyed and that she could then learn to read, etc. And sometimes, and I'm saying this not to essentially boast the Carson City Library, but sometimes, you know, we know that libraries have an impact on our community, but sometimes we don't actually know what that impact is. Our constituents, the constituents in our community don't always share that. But when you can get your constituents to share those stories with you, you can share them with your legislators, which makes much more of an impact on them because they know their constituents really do care. So, you know, just to leave you with 3 things. Your community trusts you. You're the librarian. You know, you're one of the most trusted government employees in the United States of America. You are the best advocate for yourself and for your community. You don't need professional lobbyists when you talk about libraries. There's passion there and it shows. And libraries are political, but they are not partisan. That's something that I always say. You know, they are political. We do need funding. We do need advocacy. But this is not a partisan issue. This is not a blue issue. This is not a red issue. This is not a green issue. This is a community issue. All members of your community use the library, use their stories to help communicate your library's story. And just an example of that, you know, Senator Dennison is an amazing advocate for libraries in our community. But Senator Gogachia is also an amazing advocate because he knows how much bookmobiles impact his community members on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. So again, it is political, but it's not partisan. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Sina. Very well said. And you brought out some really good points, even for those of us that have been doing some work with legislative issues and legislators in the past. Good reminders and some good focus for us as we're moving forward into our legislative season. So again, we have a moment for any questions or thoughts that you might want to put up in chat. Not at the moment, we don't have anything there, but also to remind you, we do have a Q&A at the very end, and there will be, what happens to me a lot is after everything's done, said, the recording stopped, it's like, oh, wait a minute, what about? We will have options for that as well. So don't worry if something comes up later, we have resources for you. Aha. Okay, so we do have a question from Susan Slikerman. How does an advocacy group reach community members to share their story? And we have a couple of things on that. I don't know, I might pop back to our speaker, Sina, to see if she had any thoughts on that. And then we could invite Todd if he had some comments as well. Sina, did you have something for us?
I do. I have two things. So the first thing, one of these things is going to be hard. It's going to be hard during COVID to really reach, especially like in school libraries, to reach students and to also meet all the FERPA and all the guidelines for being able to take that information and use that. One of the things we did at the Carson City Library on a local level, but I thought was extremely effective, was Valentine's. And so our community members would write Valentines about why they loved their libraries. And we would take those Valentines, dress them up, it was all pretty, and then we would deliver them to our Board of Supervisors. So those supervisors would be able to read that handwritten note from the 5-year-old, the handwritten note from the homeless person who is using the library to, try to communicate with their family via computers. And, I think that those types of messaging, if you can do that, again, hard with COVID, but that type of messaging can go a long way to ensure that your legislators or decision makers really understand where your patrons are coming from.
Thank you, Sina. Todd or Marcy or Forrest, any other thoughts that you'd like to share on that great question?
Right. I mean, I'll jump in real quickly, even though Forrest and Marcy have done this better than I have. What I'd say is the core question is, how do you reach your community with this advocacy? And there are two communities that you're wanting to reach. One of them is the people that use your library and the people that don't use your library but should. That's the universe that we exist for, right? Those folks you reach, library newsletters, the library website, social media, on the service desk in the library, walking around in the library. A friend of mine used to remind me that the good Lord gave me 2 of these and 1 of these for a reason, right? So it's really a function of listening to people, because everyone has their story, and then boiling those stories down and sharing them back out on the same loop. Most importantly, I find it's face-to-face, and maybe it's the curse of having grown up and come from a very small town, but you recognize that person to person is how all of this stuff works. Whether it's one person using your library, one person that doesn't, and turning around and boiling that down and sharing that, again, as Sina would mention, if Senator Goy, I mean, if Goa were my representative, he would want to know the stories of how the bookmobile changed my life growing up. And you better believe I'd tell it to him. But I would also tell it through the lens of the community that's using the library on a daily basis. And again, when you're talking about social media and this face-to-face, this is important with the community that we work with, but it's even more important with our legislators. And Diane, I know that you and Joan, on the advocacy website that you've been putting together, have links where you can just click on that and find out who your representative is, who's your senator in the state legislature, who is your other legislators, whether it's in the state legislature or in the representatives at the federal level and the senators, and how do you get a hold of them? And there's even more granularity that we can use to boil that down, even down to a local Board of Supervisors level. So I'm going to get out of the way again, because I can't wait to hear you share that. That's pretty cool. But just since I've already grabbed the microphone, I will say, once you're on that page, Susan Slikerman has very generously offered to give some clarification on SB 26. So when you point
We'll
that
grab
out,
it.
I mean,
Well, great. I will just amplify one of the things that Sina had mentioned, and it was, it's, I guess, something that's second nature to many of us, is not missing a moment to talk about the library. There are times that, in the supermarket, oh, you're from the library or whatever, or, it's like, oh yeah, so you can talk about some of the cool things that are going on. Or even at times, if we had, had to have a sheriff's deputy walk through, have a chance to thank them coming by have your library card. So on those points, not missing that opportunity to make the specifics about the library and what it can do for you on that individual basis. Okay, then I think at this point, we will move on to the next section, and I'm going to turn the visual over to Joan Dallasung. And if you would like to take it away there, Joan.
Thank you so much. I am not sure if you see our advocacy page.
Yes.
Perfect. Wonderful. Okay, so we're just going to take you a quick tour of some of the resources available on through nevadalibraries.org, which is our main NLA website. There's a big link. If you go to nevadalibraries.org, there's a link that will take you to this page. This page is built off of software that is freely available to Nevada Library Association and all state library associations called CQ Engage. And so we are developing this. So there may be some more changes, but just to take you on a quick tour of what's available here, since it is from ALA, they do provide ways to interact with your legislator. If you were to click this link, urge your senators to build America's libraries, that would generate a template that ALA has devised. And so you can enter your address and your information and email directly to your federal legislator, senators in this case, so Senator Cortez Masto or Rosen. It's very easy to do and very handy, and they will be updating this section. We've mentioned a couple times, we have this several places, but here's a link to who exactly is your legislator, both at the federal level and the state level. So if you're unsure, you can just enter your specific address and that information will be given to you. This section, collateral, we hope that you will find it useful in your advocacy efforts this year. And I won't click into them because I just don't know what's going to happen with my screen if I do. But I want to point out this Nevada Public Library's Fast Facts. These are just some statistics that Diane gathered from the annual Public Library Statistics Report that we have to, that all public libraries submit. And they are from 2019. They're still compiling the 2020 statistics. So 2019 is the most recent that we have, but it includes statistics like that amazing statistic that Todd gave earlier. So those are just facts that you can use in your conversations with your legislators. Another great resource is the biennial Nevada State Council on Libraries and Literacy report to the governor and the Nevada State Legislature. This is, about a 12-page report. It is a PDF. It's very graphical, very beautiful. It was developed by the State Library and the State Council on Libraries and Literacy, and it gives lots of anecdotes about the ways that our libraries have implemented many of the statewide programs. So tons of facts in there. If you and it's a really great resource to leave with your legislator, just because it's got so many of those. It's a combination of statistics and stories. And this Google Slides template, it is like it says, it's a Google slide. It's very much like a PowerPoint presentation. We hope that you can download this and adapt it, if you like, to use in your conversations with your legislators. When you go take a look at it, you will see a variety of talking points. Choose the ones that are meaningful to your library. If your library has those meaningful stories about one-stop shops for workforce development, use those. If you do not have those meaningful stories at your libraries, just delete that part. It's really a menu of ideas for you. And again, to share those meaningful stories like Sina gave the example earlier. So our intention is that you download it and edit it. You shouldn't be able to download it in its form up there on our Google Drive. One more place to find mine and Diane's and Todd's emails, contact information. And along the right here, this will likely change as the session goes on, but we've mentioned several bills that we are monitoring. Some of these are a little bit further along than others. This is SB 126, which is the bill that Todd mentioned specifically before. This is the federal Senate Bill 127, which is the Build Libraries bill. Down here, we have a couple that have not made it to, they are still in the bill draft request form. So we are just following those at this point. And here is a link to Governor Sisolak's recommended budget with some pointers to some specific places in the budget. It's quite long. So NSLA budget starts on page 552 and the Department of Ed starts on 657. And finally, I do just want to scroll way up to the top. We mentioned a couple times, here is a link to NELIS, which is the Nevada Bill Tracker. I would encourage you to just click through in there and you can enter these bills specifically, and you will be sent an email at the end of every day about the status of your bill. And most importantly, if it's going to come up in a meeting, so you could prepare to testify for it or against it, or neutral. But so NELIS is a really great resource, and all you have to do is create a username and password, which is your email. So I would go in there and check it out. And I sped through that, but hopefully you can go back later. And now I will turn over the last bit to Diane, and she will walk us through our other resources available on our second advocacy page.
Thank you, Joan. And just both of these, the website, these are snapshots in time and will be updated as we get more information on specific bills or have other resources that we can share with you. So do continue to check back on that. So on this page, we do have a number of items that are available for you. I do want to just jump back for a moment on NELIS. If you're not familiar with NELIS, that stands for the Nevada Electronic Legislative Information System. So this is a system out of the legislature itself. Thank you. Scrolling down where you can see the information there, you can specifically see tracking bills using NELIS. So we do provide a number of places for you to click through direct to those resources that you can use. At the bottom there, advocacy tips. These are a number of things. As our speaker, Sina Lloyd, had mentioned, it is different this time if you want to testify for a bill. It's not able to go into the legislature at this time. Maybe that'll change, not sure. So it's not as easy as walking into a committee room and signing the roster and getting up to testify. There is a little bit more to it as far as signing on and getting specific contact information so you can testify at a particular committee. So have some hints there on not only how to get to your committee information from NELIS, but how to testify. So those first two things there, some specific insight on what you need to do, and then some information from the Legislative Counsel Bureau itself. And then the last item there, coffee shop conversation, elevator speech, some tips, some hints on how to get a nice succinct, quick presentation to get your point across. Legislators have limited time, and with our doing things remotely, either with a Zoom meeting or a Teams meeting, which we've understood the legislature prefers using the Teams platform quite a bit. From Marcy Smedley shared that with us. You do need to keep your comments, your point succinct, and this will help you use that elevator speech approach to make sure you can get your point across clearly and use the time effectively that you have with your legislators. And all of these, of course, are good for your legislators, but they can be good to use for any of your stakeholders when you're looking at the fast facts, some of the things on the previous page, or even developing your elevator speech. Whether you're speaking to your trustees, to your board of supervisors, other stakeholders in your community, there are tips and tricks that you can glean out of there to utilize. So we've rapidly come towards the end of our session that we had. You would find that on several places where you can contact us that Joan had mentioned. Email, we welcome you to get in touch with us. We not only want to be able to answer any questions that you might have, but we would be so thrilled to get any information about the outcomes of visits that you've had, successful people you've been able to have an appointment with, any other contact on that. We would love to hear those stories as you have been able to meet with different legislators. So at this point, I was going to see if there are any other questions. Let's see, how does one participate in Thursday's Nevada Library Legislative Day? Good question. It is a COVID year, so we have quite a different circumstance. And I'll just lead off by saying it is not a regular year where we would be able to en masse come to the legislature, have our presence well known there by having a table in the lobby, be able to have presentations during the Senate and Assembly regular sessions, and then be able to go to different meetings. So that part is different. We are encouraging individuals to try and make meetings for that day, because we are looking to reach out to legislators on that day. But recognizing that this is quite a different year, we've been talking about this being a legislative season instead of a day. So if there are other times, even later on, that you're able to make connections, that is going to be our legislative day. And Joan, please, what, I didn't know if you had any other thoughts.
No, I think you covered it, and I'm just to follow up. Yes, Susan. So this year we are encouraging everyone to make those appointments. Normally we try to line up people so they sit with a legislator on the floor, on the Assembly floor or the Senate floor, but that's not possible this year. So you are able to join on Zoom, or we believe they may be, the legislature may be offering Teams. So if you contact them and say, I would like to meet with you, they may or may not, but there's a good chance that they will send a Microsoft Teams link. But you are able to join them that way. Mm-hmm. So this year, we set aside the day in the before times, and it's not really a day this year, admittedly, although we kept that terminology. We do hope to, on behalf of the Nevada Library Association, email a very positive and generic celebratory email to all the legislators that hopefully will hit their inbox on Thursday. So that's the way that we're observing the day this year.
And to Nancy's question and comment there, the email will include a link to the State Council report. We have been talking about ways to get the report into the hands of the individuals, legislators, because it is a great representation. And as Joan had mentioned, not only just with facts, but a visual representation that is easy to absorb. And so we are looking at ways to do that, but definitely they will get the link to that report to start. Thank you, Nancy. So are there any other questions or thoughts at this point? We are at our end point, and I really do thank everyone who's participated today in sharing some of their thoughts and questions, and just all the great input that we have had from our speakers.
I think Sina has her hand raised.
Sina, please.
Thank you. I did just an idea for the council report is, sorry, my camera decided to not focus. Anyway, is if you submit it as part of public comment with enough time leeway to say the budget item for the state library, then that will get printed. It won't be pretty. It will be probably black and white, but that will get printed by the staff for all of those individuals, at least on that committee.
Very good. Good. Nope, that is good input, definitely on that. So that would put it into the hands of the individuals, whether they're on the Senate Finance or Assembly Ways and Means. Thank you.
If I can add just one thing, generally we have coincided Nevada Libraries Legislative Day with National Libraries Week in April. And we are having it earlier this year because we want to get ahead of the hearing on the state library budget, which it has not been heard yet. That hasn't always happened. So that's why this day is in March. And you can follow budgets in Nellis as well. Yes. So we are ahead of that budget hearing. And as we know, the SB 126 hasn't been discussed yet either. So we are ahead of that as well. So go ahead and make those appointments and get in your legislators' ears as much as you can. It's great timing this year.
Okay, well, again, I want to thank everyone, thank our speakers, our presenters for the great thoughts and great information provided today, and thank everyone who participated. And again, any questions, don't hesitate to contact us on the Government Relations Committee or Todd as NLA President. And I think we will wrap it at this point and stop the recording.
Thank you.